Welcome to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashline from Connecticut Capital. In this podcast, we help business owners and successful professionals plan for better wealth outcomes. Join us for this journey where we explore ways to help you identify better wealth decisions to help you achieve an unfettered life. It's time to ask yourself, what do you want more of?
Hello and welcome to Unfettered Wealth with Eric Tashline. And this is Eric's inaugural podcast. You're on the ground floor, his very first podcast, where we're going to learn about him personally and we're going to learn about his practice. So without further ado, Eric, how are you?
Doing well, Eric.
I'm excited. I'll be honest. I'm excited. I know a little bit about you, but I don't know a ton. So I am going to be learning right along with our audience. And we've got about 20 questions, about half for the business side and then half the personal side. Are you ready to go?
I am.
All right. Well, let's jump in. So you work in financial services, right? So let me ask you this. Why? Why do you work in financial services? And just tell us a little bit about your history.
Sure. So I definitely owe it to my dad. I mean, I grew up in a hardworking blue-collar household, and Dad worked several jobs, didn't earn huge paychecks, but he was definitely a tremendous saver and a real savvy investor. He hadn't gone to college, but I remember him getting up at 5 a.m. every morning, like clockwork, and oftentimes reading financial magazines, Money Magazine, and probably Forbes or Fortune back in the day. And so at a young age, when I would come down the stairs, he would be sharing articles with me. So my dad is definitely the reason I'm in the business.
Nice.
For sure. And then during college, as I was going through my internship process, worked for Dean Witter, which is now Morgan Stanley, and IDS American Express, and ended up starting my first business in financial services with The Guardian at age 22. And this led ultimately to the opening of our investment firm in 1997. And before it was popular and people recognized it as the thing to do, I became a fiduciary at that time, just doing the right thing for the client, putting the client first. Very much, similar to your doctor. I mean, when you go to a great doctor, the doctor's going to do whatever they can to give you the best possible advice. And that's how we operate.
Yeah. And can you give us you gave us a kind of a 30,000 foot view of what a fiduciary is, but for those that are listening to this that don't know exactly what that means, what are you held to as a standard as a fiduciary?
Sure. So as a fiduciary, really the highest standard, I mean, every recommendation you make needs to be in the absolute best interest of the client. There can't be conflicts of interest. At the end of the day, you have to do right by your client, and you're held to that standard all the time, 24/7, which is, in my mind, it's the way everybody in this business should run their practice, but it's not always the case.
Correct. And here's the thing. I would like every business to run with the fiduciary standard. You brought up doctors. I don't want to go into the doctor, which I have to go into the doctor next week for an x-ray. I don't want him saying, oh, you know what? We're going to have to replace that arm. That's not in my best interest. My arm's okay. I probably need a little bit of maybe a little bit of rotator cuff surgery. I'm not sure. But if he says, we're going to get you a bionic arm because he's getting a big kickback from the bionics company, that's in his best interest for his new boat or his yacht or his, Mexican vacation. I don't know. No, a fiduciary is definitely held to a higher standard, and it's good to know that you are that and you take that seriously. Leading from there, who do you work with as a fiduciary, and what would be your specialty if you had to name it?
So many of our clients are business owners. Some have started the business from its inception. Others have taken over a modest family business or a successful family business and really brought it to a much higher level. And so we're helping plan for those individuals maybe to slow down. And for some of those folks, I mean, they grind it out. Some of them are working 70 hours a week. For them, working 30 might be a vacation or might be a great retirement.
Yeah.
For others, we seem to be assisting them with business sale planning these days. They need proof of concept. Eric, should we sell the business? Will there be enough money for me and my family if I do so? So that's somebody that we're doing a lot of work with. We're also working in the corporate executive market, helping them ultimately to transition to what we call the unfettered life, a more simplified life. A lot of these folks are on a treadmill these days. And so we're helping them to plan ultimately so that they can slow down as well. And I would say the common denominator for all of our clients is we really enjoy the people we work with. We're just very fortunate that way as well.
Fantastic. Now, you just described a ton of stuff that you do for your clients. Is there anything else that you would highlight that you do for clients specifically?
So first things first with clients, we get to know them. We take as much info as we can, much like the best detectives in the old TV series we may have watched, and then draw up financial plans and make recommendations based on their unique fingerprint, right? Yeah. The very last piece of the process should be investment management. And far too often we see some other advisors just moving investments under management without enough thoughtful planning. And, in this industry, for sure, putting the cart before the horse doesn't usually work out well for anybody. I think it's really important to make sure that you're working with somebody that's doing a thorough job on the upfront financial plan.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, again, that's a beautiful way to approach it. And I know that every one of your clients is going to be much better off when you take that time to really do that detective work. You spoke about business owners, and that's obviously a large group that you work with. Are they your ideal client, or do you have something else as a definition for your ideal client?
Yeah, I would say that we're working with folks that are leaders. They're successful people, usually heading into a transition phase. So as I said earlier, definitely business clients, executives. We have others that maybe they are in other roles. They might be in corporate life. Maybe they've experienced life events, loss of a spouse. They may have inherited some money from other family members in terms of windfalls. So I would say all four of those, the business owners, the executives, the spouse of that successful executive, those are some of the individuals we do a really solid job with. We're great at planning for those individuals.
Great.
And I think the other thing we do from a business philosophy standpoint is we try to limit the amount of clients we take on. So I'm describing the best clients. I mean, by and large, we would love to work with everybody. I think we're financial social workers at heart, but we realize that it's not feasible to work with everybody that contacts us. So we generally have an investment minimum of $1 million of investable assets for folks that come in. But if there's somebody out there that's listening that maybe doesn't fall into that category, we encourage a phone call and email. We always want to take the time to point them in the right direction. That's how we run our business.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's 256 million adults in the United States, and I think you'd be swamped if you worked with everybody. So it's good to be a little selective. How do you find these new clients?
Sure. So I'd say generally it's referrals from existing clients.
That's fantastic. And that speaks volumes about the business that you run, because no one's going to recommend somebody that they don't respect or like or think is doing a good job, because that's going to hurt their business. That's going to hurt their relationships with those clients. So that does speak volumes. When you are working with clients, what kind of client education do you do?
Sure. So I would say it's definitely based on the individual person. So we definitely provide a lot of one-on-one education. We have a lot of discussions. We always will tell clients, if you're not understanding something, for example, if it's an investment that we're describing, if they're really not understanding it or they're not comfortable, they definitely shouldn't go that route. Maybe we'll come up with some other options once we go through that educational process if there's not a certain level of comfort. We also do bring in those outside CPAs and attorneys. So if somebody has a complex estate planning question, a trust question, if there's an issue with their tax return as well, we have a great network of people that we refer to.
All right, Eric, I've met you a few times. We've spoken a handful of times, and I already know that you're fantastic. However, there's no way that you can do what you do by yourself. So who's on your team and how do they help you out in what you do?
Sure. So I have a great team. Brian Park is a certified financial planner. He's my business partner, and Brian oversees all aspects of the client experience, including financial planning and service. He's a member of our firm's investment committee as well. Secondly, we have Jill Anise. So Jill has her MBA, and she works with our team of advisors, just ensuring excellent client service. She has that mentality. She wants to do a great job for our clients that call in.
Nice.
She's currently also working on her financial paraplanning designation as well to be able to assist me and Brian. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we're all excited for her to get through that.
Yeah.
Also, Karen Ferraro has been with me. Poor woman's put up with me for more than 20 years.
Oh, right on. Good.
And she's our director of First Impressions. So she's definitely the first point of contact at the office. And she handles office operations and assists us, the team of advisors, with client service, just to make sure that we're keeping a high level of service for the clients.
Great.
And then lastly, we have Brandon Arjaros, and he's been an intern with us for the last 2 years. He's a senior at University of New Haven, and he is in process of taking his securities exams as we speak. So, good luck to Brandon.
Yeah, no kidding. That's a lot of education there. That's good. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But before we get to the education question, what do you guys do in the community?
Sure. So in terms of the profession, I was past president of the Financial Planning Association of New Haven. Mm-hmm. And I also had sat for many years on the state board as well. So I put a big effort into the FPA, which is a great organization, for many years. Mm-hmm. Also locally, I'm past president of our Milford Rotary Club. And lately, and I guess for about the last 10 years, I'm head chef. Every year as a club, we'll put on a great Thanksgiving meal for the homeless shelter here in town.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it makes, making a great hot meal on what usually is a very cold day, I think means a lot to these folks. We get a lot of thank yous. I think we get a lot more of it than they do. Mm-hmm. So it's just something we look forward to every year.
Yeah, good for you. That's fantastic. Love when businesses come together and work in the community and just to make it a better place. And there's nothing that you're receiving back from it besides, those warm feelings and maybe the thank yous and things, but it just means so much. And I wish more people would step up and do that. So thank you guys for doing that in your community.
Thanks.
Yeah. And let's go back to the education piece. So what designations or advanced education do you have, Eric?
Sure. So I'm a certified financial planner, and the CFP mark is really the gold standard for financial planners.
Yep. That's a tough one.
It definitely is. I mean, hundreds of hours of study combined with years of practical experience and ongoing education. And I've heard a few attorneys that have taken the exam telling me that it was harder than the bar.
Oh, wow.
But that said, it's kind of the base camp or the foundation for good financial planners. I mean, I think to ascend to the top of our profession, you really need to be a lifetime learner. Mm-hmm. And I think, my business partner and I are constantly reading trade journals, listening to podcasts, attending conferences on investing and planning. Not to mention, we have a large group of firms that we respect and admire that we share best practices with as well. So if your advisor is golfing 3 or 4 days a week, I'm not sure that they are putting in the time that they need to really be at the top of their game.
Well, it depends on which game you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah, but it's not the game that the client wants, that's for sure. All right. You spoke a little bit about philosophy earlier, but I'm going to drill down a little bit. What is your financial philosophy, and do you have one?
Sure. So I would say we have 4 pillars that make up our financial philosophy. First of all, we talked about financial planning first earlier, right? Mm-hmm. So with that, you want to take the least amount of risk required to meet your goals and to achieve the results that you're looking for from a portfolio standpoint. I think that's really important. I think a lot of folks sometimes don't take enough risk, and sometimes they take way too much risk, which is typically the case. And I think if you're able to scale back that risk, I think it's going to lead to a much better, less stressful life in retirement. So that's one. The second one along that line is really to manage your volatility whenever possible. I think incorporating assets that tend to be less volatile when markets head south, I think leads to a better client experience. So, we typically will have a good slug of consumer staples incorporated into the portfolio along with some other alternative assets as well. I think that's really important. Third, because we work with a lot of individuals that are selling their business, we manage a lot of taxable money, and capital gains and taxes are a huge driver, in our opinion, of your long-term results. Mm-hmm. And as a firm, we really feel like we can add significant value to our investors by mitigating those taxes throughout the course of the year through tax loss harvesting and some other techniques. And I would say the fourth pillar is definitely having a financial coach is really important. I mean, you're typically only going to retire once. You're typically only going to sell your business one time. I think having a team that's been there before and have helped many individuals through that process and transition to retirement to ultimately a more simplified life is really important.
Fantastic. I'm going to challenge you right now. By the way, we're done with the hard questions. So now I'm going to give you a little bit of a break here. But before we go to the personal questions, I'm going to challenge you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. You mentioned tax loss harvesting. I know what that means, kind of, and I'm going to ask you right now, can we have a podcast on that in the future?
Absolutely. It's on the list.
Perfect. All right. Good deal. Yeah.
It's really important. Sorry, we had mentioned the CPAs earlier, and I think they're most appreciative when they're looking at a tax return and there's a negligible amount of tax impact on an annual basis.
Yeah, and that actually is going to lead to another podcast request, because I want to know how you and your team work with outside advisors, because I know that clients a lot of times, I've worked with financial advisors for a very, very long time with my other company, which I'm a coach and a consultant for advisors. And one thing I hear constantly is that clients don't think that their usually old financial advisor has worked well with their other advisors, whether that's an attorney or a CPA or whatever. So I want to do a podcast, and maybe we can get a guest on that podcast of folks that you work with and how you kind of help orchestrate the plans and things for your clients so that everybody's on the same page. Can we do that too?
Absolutely.
Oh man, I got you now. We're going to have some good times with those. All right, let's switch over to the personal questions. When you're not working, what do you do for fun, man?
I would say what's most important to me are my kids, my wife, my family, my friends. And what's great is when I'm having fun, they at least one or two of those categories are involved with it. So my new hobby this past year, I took up tennis again, and now pickleball with the kids. And, so I'm playing with some of the local dads once a week anyway on the tennis court, which is fun.
Yeah.
And then my wife and I are going to join a tennis league this year. So that, for us, it's fun. And then the last 10 years, I've been a CrossFitter 3 days a week, trying to keep my energy up, keep my health, and definitely into fly fishing, some boating, travel, golf, and skiing. And last year, a good buddy and I hooked up with a bunch of tarpon on a fly rod down in the Keys, and it was an absolute blast. And I fought a 100-pound tarpon for an hour until it ultimately broke the line, and it was heading to a Cuba the last time I saw it. But it was just a good time.
Oh, that pains me. I was down in Mexico a few months ago, or at the end of 2019, and I got a 40-pound sailfish, and I only fought it for about 15 to 20 minutes, but we got it in. But I can imagine fighting for an hour. I would have lasted an hour. So good for your CrossFit, because I don't do CrossFit. And I was thinking, man, this is and maybe that's why I'm going to have shoulder surgery soon. I don't know, but that fish got me as much as I did it. It was catch and release. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm right there with you. And you said pickleball, and man, boy, the memories flood back. We actually in junior high had a part of our PE course. We had a whole quarter of pickleball. And I haven't played it since, but I remember it very, very vividly. I enjoyed it. I didn't know it still existed. I thought it was something my gym teacher made up.
It's funny. I want to game the system when I retire. It's one of these games now that has taken off down south. In Florida, and we were down in at a conference, and there were literally 600 or 700 retirees playing. So I joke with Debbie, I'm like, I want to be ready for 15 years from now when I retire. I want to, have fun playing in those leagues.
Pro pickleball. Yeah. Senior league. That's awesome. All right. So, Eric, who's your hero? If you had to pick somebody, who would be your hero?
So definitely my dad. I mean, we all have a few people in our lives that are our biggest advocates. And Dad was always asking me, how am I doing? He's interested in how the business was going. I was the first generation college student. So, it was exciting for the family that, we had a business. What I loved about him is, definitely we were a stubborn blue collar guy, but using his stubbornness, he'd use that quality to accomplish tasks.
Yeah.
As example, at 70, his health really started to fail. And he did a complete change of his diet. He quit smoking and many other bad habits, became a mall walker. He lost about 80 pounds. And he actually, he kept the weight off and his routine for the next 14 years of his life. So
wow. That's great.
it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was amazing. So nobody loves you like your mom and dad. And thankfully, in my case, I had two great parents.
That's fantastic. All right. I love this next question. If you had all the money you ever needed, all the money you would ever need for a lifetime, it just shows up in your wallet all the time, what would you do?
Sure. So, it's funny. I definitely, we have these conversations with clients. And so for me, it's like, if you love what you're doing, you never really feel like you're working.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do love helping people. I love collaborating with attorneys and CPAs on behalf of the client. So for me, I really get a kick out of helping people succeed and then hearing about their travels and grandchildren and golfing. But, if I had all the money in the world, I would definitely take a little more time. I'd work some, help with charities for children.
Mm-hmm.
The church that I attend, like all churches or synagogues in New England, are in need of restoration and financial help. So I guess if I had unlimited funds, I'd create an endowment.
Nice. Fantastic. Eric, what is your idea of success?
Sure. So for me, it's definitely helping others to succeed with their goals.
Mm-hmm.
And in addition to that, though, being a great dad and spouse and the best friend that I can be. So, and then also to be physically healthy and mentally vibrant. I think that kind of defines it for me.
All right. What's one thing that you recommend most to clients, family, or friends? And this can be anything. It could be a book. It can be your favorite pizza. It can be, pickleball, whatever.
I would say, a lot of our clients, a lot of my friends, just hard workers. There's a great work ethic. I would say just to take some time out for yourself, just to, work on your health and, probably get a physical once in a while. Anyways, I feel like we have a lot of clients over the years that have retired with a good amount of money, but it doesn't really help if your health changes. So that would be my best advice.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've done this kind of questionnaire with a lot of people in a lot of different circumstances. And people ask me to skip certain questions. I don't know if I want to answer that one, but this is the one I don't let anybody skip because I always love to hear the answer. Eric, name one thing that most people don't know about you.
Sure. So I have a list, and there's a top 100 rivers in the country, and I've hit about 40 of those for fly fishing.
Oh, wow.
And absolutely love it. So I've done it with my friends. I've done it with my family. I mean, thank goodness, like tarpon and trout live in the most beautiful places in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've seen, ram sheep descending from the hills and moose and bear and eagles, landing right next to me. Wow. During that process. So my goal is before it's too late is to hit the top 100 rivers.
Yeah. Anytime that you need me to carry your stuff for you,
absolutely.
While you're, hooked into one of those big fish and you're fighting, I can feed you a sandwich, anything. I just want to go hang out with you. I was in Colorado in November and it's just so amazing it was November, so it was cold, but I got in the water anyway. I got right in the river. My feet were numb within seconds, but it was just so crystal clear, beautiful, and nice. I just had to be in there. So I'm right there with you. Wow. All right, let's get back on track here. Speaking of getting back on track, what is a mantra, motto, or something you say to yourself to keep focused and on track?
So our mantra, I would say we've always talked about, for every person that comes in the office or that we interact with on the phone, our goal is with every interaction to leave people in a better place financially than when they first reached out to us.
Yeah, that's a great motto to have. It's almost like the leave a place better than when you found it, right? And you, I'm sure, take that to heart as well. Somebody who's going to be, visiting all the different rivers. You're one of those guys that's going to go in there and make sure that your footprint isn't seen ever again, that maybe even you can pick up something on your way out. That sure. I kind of keep that same idea. It's unfortunate. People just kind of have junk in their lives. Like when they come in, they have financial junk, and same thing when people are out visiting beautiful places, for some reason, they sometimes leave some junk around. So let's pick it up and help it to be better than what we found. So that's great. All right. We're almost done. We've only got 2 questions left. And this one I really like to ask. What is your proudest achievement?
So I would say my greatest achievement, definitely my daughters, my choice of spouse, and the business we've grown. So all three, Eric, kind of encompass what's most important to me in my life. So being a father to two great kids is super rewarding.
Mm-hmm.
My wife, Debbie, is a world-class mom, and she has always supported me in my business endeavors. She's strong. I mean, she never complained when I was working nights or 6 days a week for decades. Mm-hmm. And she just knows what it takes to run and grow a great business and to raise daughters in an age of, huge distractions. So she's definitely another hero in my life.
Fantastic. Yep. Debbie's make the best moms because, my mom's name is Debbie. So I'll put that in there. All right. Last question. You have the attention of a lot of people. This podcast, we are hoping that it goes nationwide. Well, it is nationwide, but we want a ton of people to hear it. And we know kind of who your ideal clients are and the people that you want to work with. Let's give them a sneak preview. What are we going to be talking about on this podcast?
Sure. So in the future, definitely, as you said, we'll talk a little bit about tax management. I think that's super important. We'll definitely talk about what you should see in your financial plan. I mean, hopefully everybody listening has a written plan and not just something done on a sheet of paper. I think everything that they do needs to be well thought out.
Yeah.
We'll definitely interview some business owners that have transitioned their business to a sale and what that next life is like for them, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah, and because what's happening these days, Eric, is there's so much private equity money. A lot of our clients are getting approached. They're getting letters and contacts to sell. And I think what we'll do is we'll bring in some of the folks on every aspect of that process. So maybe it's the private equity firm that's buying businesses, what they're looking for. Maybe we'll bring in some business valuation firms that can speak to what you need to address within the business before you sell, and then some other experts in that area as well.
This is going to be great, Eric. I'm so excited to be podcasting with you, and I want to thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Eric.
You bet. And audience, I want to thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast with Eric Tashline. If you have not subscribed to the podcast yet, which I know you haven't because this is the very first one, click that subscribe button below. This way, when Eric comes out with a new podcast, it'll show up directly on your listening device. This will make it much easier to share these podcasts with your friends and family. And I encourage you to do that because it leads to great conversations about what you've learned and what you guys can learn together and the changes that you can make to make your situation better than when you found the podcast in the first place. Again, thank you so much for listening today. For everyone at Connecticut Capital Management Group, this is Eric Johnson reminding you to live your best day every day. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Unfettered Wealth Podcast. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of Connecticut Capital. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. Content should not be construed as personalized investment, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, or tax advisor in regards to your individual situation. Eric Tashline is an investment advisory representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefits Group, LLC are not affiliated.
Eric Tashline is a certified financial planner professional and founding principal of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, 2 Schooner Lane, Suites 1-12 in Milford. He can be reached at 203-877-1520 or through www.connecticutcapital.com. This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as personalized investment advice or legal tax advice. Please consult your advisor, attorney, tax advisor. Eric is an investment advisor representative of Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Connecticut Capital Management Group, LLC, and Connecticut Benefit Group, LLC, are not affiliated.